So I recently saw Fast and Furious presents Hobbs and Shaw, and I'll admit, I kind of enjoyed it. The plot's all over the place, and it's really silly and cliched, but it accomplishes much of what has made the Fast and Furious franchise a success over the last nearly 20 years. The characters are the focus. Put in the most ridiculous and high-octane scenarios, both Dwayne Johnson's Luke Hobbs and Jason Statham's Deckard Shaw reveal who they are and how they respond to their world by how they make choices during intense action. Like in this scene from the trailer. It's used to establish the relationship that the two leads have at the start of the film. They hate each other. This we know from previous Fast and Furious movies.
I will beat your ass like a Cherokee drum.
But now, the pair have a shared goal and eventually, they'll grow to respect and even like each other. But in this scene, that's not yet the case. Obviously, this moment is mostly played for laughs, but the filmmakers make a choice to capitalize on this gag and the ensuing action to help establish character. Hobbs is a blunt object. Of course he's gonna leap out the side of a building with nothing to catch him. Shaw is different. He's much more resourceful, using the elevator to shield himself from gunfire, while also speeding his descent down the building. This scene is fucking insane. The physics make absolutely no sense. Characters take hits that would realistically kill them instantly. But this isn't an oversight in the filmmaking. Rather, it's a choice to completely ignore any real-world logic to prepare the audience for the kind of action that you'll see throughout the remainder of the runtime. It's no secret that the art of cinema is an art of choice. Every cut, line of dialogue,
is looking at you, kid.
and shot framing conveys something about the story on screen. And I find discussing art as a series of choices to be much more interesting and productive than just labeling something as good or bad. It makes us ask why a decision was made, forcing us to consider the perspective of the filmmakers or characters rather than our own. But when it comes to action, directors and stunt coordinators don't usually get this consideration. It seems the assumption is that if you don't focus primarily on dialogue, you aren't advancing the plot and character as much as something like this.
You're not. Even if you'd like to be.
But if we're really being honest, the construction of a frantic and fast-paced action scene displays just as much artistic choice as a scene of dialogue. Choices such as fast-paced editing, shaky cam, the absence of music, and even what kind of punch is thrown can tell so much about a character, as well as their relationship to the world, their opponent, and the story in the context of the film or series. So to explain this idea, I'll be going over two fight scenes from two very different action franchises that I believe illustrate how the art of choice is used in action filmmaking. Both raid films are above and beyond most action movies, certainly far beyond anything made in the United States. They're a masterclass in stunt coordination, fight choreography, and storytelling through action. If all I was trying to do was illustrate the brilliance of action filmmaking, I easily could have just shown a supercut of both of Gareth Evans' films. But I'm hoping that by exploring the final battles in both Revenge of the Sith and The Raid 2, I can show how other action films use a similar level of creative choice, even something as ridiculous as Hobbs and Shaw. The Star Wars prequels get their fair share of hate, which, when you look exclusively at the dialogue scenes, I understand. The acting and shot composition is stiff and lifeless when all the characters are doing is talking to each other. But I grew up on the prequels and I love them, flaws and all. And I truly think there is some excellent filmmaking on display throughout the trilogy, but most prominently in the action scenes. The 2-on-1 fight in Phantom Menace is fantastic. It's set in a memorable location that is well established and easy enough to follow. Characters act in ways that tell us a lot about them, and the action choreography echoes the world building, as the three Force users utilize their abilities in almost every beat. The overly choreographed nature of fight scenes in the prequels is often labeled as a negative, but I think this is a very intentional and valid choice. These are individuals who can sense the thoughts and feelings of their opponents. They're essentially superheroes who can move much faster and with much better reflexes than any normal person. Therefore, it makes a lot of sense that the characters appear to know almost exactly where the next hit is coming from. And this choice makes it that much more impactful when a successful hit is landed. While I do love the Duel of Fates sequence, the battle between Heroes and Revenge of the Sith is my favorite lightsaber fight in the series. It's grand and emotional and all the way Star Wars is supposed to be. It displays the relationship between the two main protagonists better than any other scene in the trilogy. This is a battle between two of the most powerful Jedi who have ever lived at their peak. A confrontation between friends who have been turned against each other while they were worlds away. And all of this is conveyed after their sabers ignite. I know one of the bigger complaints about the prequels is that we never got to see Anakin and Obi-Wan's relationship the way it was described in A New Hope. And up until this scene, I can mostly agree. However, in this duel, we see Obi-Wan's training and the bond between both Jedi come to the forefront. As the battle commences, we get a full display of the speed and power these Jedi have. Anakin leaps at Obi-Wan, and the two engage in far and away the fastest and most ferocious saber sequence we've seen in the Star Wars franchise. Anakin, who is driven entirely by emotion, and in particular anger, leads the duel. Notice how for the entire first half of the battle, Obi-Wan is simply playing defense. Even at the start of the duel, while Obi-Wan is the first to ignite his blade, it is in response to this threat from Anakin.
You will try.
I'd also like to point out the blocking in this exchange. Anakin is facing away from Obi-Wan, unable to even look at him until he makes the decision to kill him. It's a small choice that goes a long way to make this initial attack feel like an explosion of anger.
Come on, cry, baby, cry for me. Come on, cry.
Deep in the recesses of my brain, a tiny red-hot little flame began to grow.
The Raid 2 battle starts very differently. Rama has been through the fucking ringer. He's been ambushed, knocked out, taken captive, fought his way out of that captivity, and then single-handedly took down a small army and 2 super assassins. With his last trusted ally dead and his family safe, there's nothing left for him to do but end the fighting by bringing it all down. In the next room are his final targets, but between them and him is one final but massive obstacle. Known only as the Assassin, this character is the perfect match for Rama. Unlike the other 2 assassins in the Raid 2, Baseball Batman and Hammer Girl, yes, these are their actual names, the Assassin doesn't really rely on any gimmicks. Instead, he mostly fights unarmed, like Rama, utilizing his environment and only when necessary, a karambit, a traditional weapon used in Pencak Silat, the martial art that Rama is also a master of. He also kind of looks like Rama, sporting a similar haircut and costume. Most fight scenes in these movies are quick and brutal and break out unexpectedly, giving Rama little time to assess the situation and instead, forcing him to react to each attacker as they reach him. But this final duel is handled very differently. Both characters show respect for the other, squaring up for a battle between equals. This change in pace is there for a reason. Remember, Rama lost the first round. He can't approach this fight with the same reckless confidence he has every other. He's a room away from his goal, so the stakes for him and the audience are higher than ever. I love the way the assassin grins through the first few action beats. He's excited to be facing a worthy opponent. He's impressed with Rama's technique and baits him to strike again. Compare this to the way the Revenge of the Sith scene starts. Unlike in that movie, these two aren't close. They don't have a history that goes back further than a day. Rama and the assassin are learning about each other in the moment. There are many points in this fight where they counter with each other's moves right after they were used. The setting for this fight is also a brilliant choice. It's a perfect rectangle, allowing for easy to follow geography, which is established well as we see the kitchen staff slowly leave from various spots in the room. Before any attacks are thrown, we see the glass wine area, the metal cookware, and the large island in the middle, which all pay off later in the action. The color is a key choice as well. The almost entirely white kitchen evokes something like a sparring room, which fits this duel of martial arts masters. This contrasts well with the deep red of the previous fight, which feels like something out of a far more heightened reality. We can compare this with Revenge of the Sith, which sets its battle on a river of flowing lava, and for a major portion, in this control room, both of which have been established several times throughout the third act. However, it is somewhat ruined by the choice to cut between this battle and the one on Coruscant. See how between this cut and this cut, we've completely switched locations. Both rooms have a similar shape, so we don't lose the geography, but we lose a lot of the kinetic energy that is present in moments like these. That said, I do really like the moment that comes after this cutaway. While I do think the fight choreography could be stronger here, I still really like this choice to get a little rough and real for a beat. It shows that the respect for combat that Jedi and Sith typically show is thrown out the window here. It's sort of the inverse of my earlier point in The Raid 2, how in that film, the final battle stands out by beginning less kinetically. The consistency of choice in this battle is really astounding. Even here, when both Jedi pull this weird, saber-spinning move that doesn't seem to have a realistic tactical purpose. Their fighting styles match up throughout this fight to the point where, in this moment, Master and Apprentice completely mirror each other. It's like how Rama and the Assassin mirror each other, but much more literally, indicating a much closer and older relationship. Like in Revenge of the Sith, the final battle in The Raid 2 starts by giving the eventual loser of the fight the initial advantage. However, in The Raid, the momentum isn't as clear as in Star Wars. While the assassin starts out confidently in the lead, he loses that advantage early on, and from there it's a constant back and forth. Evans utilizes several tools to show these shifts, such as loud hits against the environment, wide shots showing a series of successful hits, and close-ups on particularly painful attacks that raise the stakes even further. While Revenge of the Sith has some of these smaller shifts, there's a much clearer midpoint when Obi-Wan takes the momentum from Anakin. Both Jedi are forced to stop fighting and seek cover when a large splash of lava rains down onto the battleground. Obi-Wan, the more experienced and wise Jedi, sees this as an opportunity to gain a slight upper hand, or you could say, high ground. Don't worry, we'll get there. Once this metal barge breaks off and falls into the river, the battle takes a literal turn in a new direction. While Anakin is still fighting with more aggression, he can no longer keep the action at the same speed. Obi-Wan successfully gains some distance as he climbs, and instead of unleashing a constant flurry of deadly blows, Anakin must now keep up. Since he's now leading the fight, Obi-Wan can move from one better position to the next, landing himself on this hovercraft where he attains stable footing for the first time in this entire battle. Anakin leaps from the barge onto this small droid, displaying his preserved overconfidence, but he never regains control of the duel. The choice to place such a clear shift in this duel is just as valid as the constant exchange of momentum in The Raid 2. The difference isn't a matter of one being inherently better than the other. Remember, we know how this battle ends. We've all seen the original trilogy, so the tension comes from anticipation, as the audience wonders how much longer Anakin can keep up amid less and less advantages. Whereas in The Raid 2, we have no idea if Rama will succeed, so the back and forth works better than it ever would have in Revenge of the Sith. Once the blades come out, the violence in the Raid 2 fight ramps up. Again, the choice of setting pays off, as the White Room really emphasizes each splatter of blood. Interestingly, neither fight ends victoriously. In fact, they both conclude in a brutally joyless fashion. I really like how Evans gives us these deadlocked moments in close-up. It conveys how equally pained and exhausted both fighters are. While they aren't exactly pausing, it breaks up the pace of the action before a disgusting finish. In Revenge of the Sith, the final moments are broken up with dialogue. And while it comes off clunky like most dialogue in the trilogy, the moments are still effective to me thanks to a fantastic performance by Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen really selling the anger. In this famous moment, Obi-Wan offers Anakin one last chance to surrender.
It's over, Anakin! I have the high ground!
But Anakin is too far gone, and despite his own master's warning,
Don't try it!
attempts an attack that was always doomed to fail. Not just because Obi-Wan had a tactical advantage. This battle is about more than just who is the better and smarter fighter. This attack fails because Obi-Wan has seen it before. It's his move. I can't prove whether this choice was made intentionally to call back to the Phantom Menace. But regardless, it goes a long way to not only show the headspace Obi-Wan and Anakin are in at this moment, but also their history. Obi-Wan knows the only move Anakin can make, because he's been in that position. While I obviously think the action does most of the heavy lifting in this confrontation, this last bit of acting from McGregor really cements the heartbreak of this final battle. It intentionally removes any sense of satisfaction from seeing the hero win, and this line delivery in particular,
"For my brother Anakin, I loved you,"
is really powerful to me, especially following a battle that showed just how close these two really were. It reminds me of the end of the Phantom Menace battle, how the death of Qui-Gon is the real focus, rather than the defeat of Darth Maul. For movies made for children, these are dark and bold choices that I don't think get nearly enough credit. I find myself revisiting the fight scenes in the Raid series and the duels in the Star Wars prequels often, definitely more than I revisit the films as a whole. They just work so well in presenting the story and characters that I really think they work in isolation. Compare them to something like the throne room scene in The Last Jedi. I know this scene is popular, and I do really like this movie. It has some of the best acting and directing in the entire series. That said, the more I watch this fight, the more it leaves me cold. Clearly they were going for something fast-paced and highly choreographed like the prequels, yet the timing just feels off. I want to give a shout out to the Corridor Crew's Stuntmen React series, which really helped me find the words to explain why I don't find this battle nearly as effective as most other saber duels in the saga.
If you watch them, in between each move, the stunt guys, who I'm sure are phenomenal and probably super on it, realize Daisy and Kylo Ren there are late. So every time they spin backwards into their move, they're just pausing in their little pose and waiting for them to be ready and then coming in and attacking on time.
The battle is technically shot well, and I really love the colors in this scene, but I don't think we are getting as much deliberate and thoughtful artistic choice as we got in the prequels. The battle feels like an obligation, like it's there to appease fans like me who were worried that a turn back to a style of filmmaking closer to the original trilogy would mean losing out on the fast-paced duels we got in the prequels. Everything important that happens in this throne room occurs either just before or after the battle. No one of consequence dies in this fight. Snoke dies right at the beginning, but none of the faceless guards that go down have any bearing on the story. Really, if they weren't in the room, and once Kylo killed Snoke, it cut straight to this exchange with Rey, nothing about the story would really be any different. Except for, I guess, Kylo wouldn't be holding Rey's lightsaber, which admittedly does come from this awesome moment that does at least show the trust Rey has in Kylo. But there's a whole lot of action before this that doesn't feel like it has had nearly as much thought put into it. Granted, the whole point of this video was to praise action and highlight choices that get overlooked, so if I'm missing something, let me know in the comments. Hey everyone, it's Ed. Thanks for watching this video. It means a lot for me to finally get this done and get this out there. It took me a while to do, and I've been meaning to do video essays for a long time now. I really enjoy watching them, so to be able to create one myself is kind of a big deal for me. So if you liked it, please, subscribe to the channel, comment below, like the video, all that generic YouTuber stuff. And yeah, thanks for watching and thanks for supporting. See ya.